basically, there's a few things. Basically, is just choosing the right kind of export, the information that you're looking for. So I've kind of give you general ideas of what we have as far as exports that you can pull from the system. So when we're talking about exports, it's not like your scheduled reports or reports that you can get in the system. We have a lot of those. So you can get the data in a bunch of different ways, but this is strictly on exports, and exports are really to pull the data maybe out to maybe import into another system. Um, so for those, we have, things like your users. You can get all of them in one huge file. You could get a student export. um, we also have tutors and instructors export, and that's just going to be a list of all those users. So if you were adding your users manually as they came into your center, this would be maybe something that you'd want to export now that you've got it into like a electronic system. Maybe export that out and pull that into maybe another system that you're going to use that's electronic. Then we have our classes and subject areas exports, and these are going to be either classes and subjects that you've created in the system or that you've brought over from another system. So I don't know how helpful that would be, but depending on the use case, maybe you need to pull it over to another system, and you want to use our data silo as where you pull that from. That information is available for you. And the difference between the subject areas, those are your general courses usually. If you're more in like advising areas, it might be just like the general topics of discussion that you would go through. So sometimes that's good to pull that out and be able to have that in electronic form. So then we also have the enrollment data, which is basically tying all the students to their courses. So if you needed that information pulled out, I don't see a lot of people going in and doing that manually, but let's say you did supplemental instruction and you manually registered all your students for those supplemental instruction courses. So you might want to pull a list of that enrollment data. Additionally, we have the session logs and the appointments, and I feel like these last two are really the most beneficial, I guess, or basically what our system is generating for you. So the session logs are all the attendance that the center collect throughout the semester. This is going to be detailed information of what services the students used. Um, and every line is going to be a different visit from each student. So it's going to have the courses that they were helped in, who helped them, like what tutor or advisor was helping them. Basically every bit of information that you'd want to know about that session. Even as detailed as the notes, if somebody put notes or comments on the session, or if there was an assessment filled out. So all that we're going to see is in there. Um, the next one that's helpful is the appointments. Now, appointments, I don't really like that one as much because with appointments, they could or could not have happened. And it will show you that status, like whether they were a show or a no-show for that. But usually, I like the session logs because they're going to show you whether that was an appointment and if it actually happened. It's going to be in those logs. So you're not going to have anything in the session logs basically that did not occur, whereas with the appointments, you got to look at it and see which ones they showed up for. But those are two of the reports that are actually generated within Accudemia itself. So when you pull that data, it'd be good to maybe put into another reporting system that maybe you have a better analysis or reporting, or you need to combine it with other data that might be factored in, like grades and things that we don't store in our system. So those are good to pull. And what we're going to do is the next two sections is basically I'm going to go into Accudemia directly, and we're going to run and import once from within the system. And then I'm going to show you how you can actually schedule those exports as well. So here, I'm going to switch over to my internets. Dun, 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 dun. And we're going to go to Accudemia. This is just my demo account, so log in using the admin credentials. We're going to go to Administration, Advanced, and then the very last option under Advanced is Export. And here you can see a list of all those different exports that I was mentioning. So like we have the all users, the students, the tutors. One of the other interesting things is not only do we have a list of all your session logs ever collected, is we have these time-based reports as well. So if I only needed like the last 3 months of attendance logs or session logs, I can pull that. I can pull the last year, the last 6 months. So there's different time ranges that I can pull. And then on the appointments, same with that, I have like the last week of appointments I could see, or I could just pull every appointment ever created. And it's as simple as clicking on one of these. So let's say I do the last 7 days of session logs. Now, depending on how big this is, it might take a while to process, but if I don't have too many records, it shouldn't take too long. If you are in a hurry, once you've initiated it and you got to this screen where it says you're being processed, you could actually leave and tell it to email you, and the system would email you when it completes. So as long as you get the little green thing here, the only way you'd get a red message is if you didn't have your email addressed up here in your profile information. But since I did, it was fine with that. And actually it just finished. So
Nick, I have a quick question about that.
sure.
So if you get if you opt to get a notification when the export is complete, will the email contain a link to the export, or will it just have a link to go to back to Accudemia, or will it not have a link at all?
I think what it'll do is it'll have a link to take you back to this page.
Okay.
So if you see how it has kind of like a job number in here, I mean, I don't want to get too specific on the link it gives, but I think it'll make you log back in if you're not, and then basically give you the option to download here.
Okay, so it just takes you back to that page. Cool.
Right, right. And it is basically, it's going to show up in your report history as well. So if you ever go to reports and you see view past reports, so it does kind of treat it like a report in a way, because it does show up in these logs. So this was that last 7 days that I pulled. All right, and so that's just under advanced export. That's just if I want to run these like one time. So the next thing I kind of want to show is if I want to run these and get those to go regularly. Maybe I need to have them go to like a network share or something like that. Now to do that, it seems counterintuitive, but if I go to Administration Advanced Import, which is, our import utility, but the import utility actually has an export feature on it. So this is where I would go ahead and download that import utility. And once I've got it downloaded, here, let me pull. I'm just going to double click on the ADX icon on my desktop. And I'm actually using a secondary monitor, so I'm just going to double click on it. You guys can assume that I clicked it. And as it's opening here, it's going to have me log in. Here we go. And I'm going to go ahead and click on, it logged me in, but we're going to do, instead of new import job up here, we have another button that says new export job. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and it's going to bring up the wizard. Pretty much if you're familiar with the imports, it's kind of similar. But the only difference now, instead of pointing it to a file that we want to import, we actually have all those different exports that we saw in the system available. So let's say I wanted to pull a weekly session log report so that each week I could pull that information, have it sitting somewhere for maybe another tool that's going to import it into Banner or another system, like DataTel, whatever you guys use. Um, so let's go ahead and just, all I have to do is tell it what location. Now, if it was on the network, I could go ahead and type in a network location. Okay, and let's say I want it to go right here, and that's fine, that's deep enough. So I'll just call this Accudemia export. Last 7 days. I always like to just give it a really descriptive name and then save that. So now it knows it's going to be putting it on the network in this folder, and this is what we're going to call it. And then if I hit next, pretty much I just give it a name so that this is actually for the tool itself, so that on the left-hand side, you'll see it's going to name it that. So we're going to call this last 7-day export. Finish. Okay, so now in my jobs, I could see this. And really all we did was kind of set up the task to go. What we're going to do is click view details, and I could run it one time just to make sure that it does work and it puts it in that folder. In fact, I'll do that. If I run it once here, it's going to process the job and hopefully give me a green dot. So now if I were to open that shared location here, and just look for that CSV. Sure enough, there it is. So there's my CSV. Now, if I want to schedule this, I'm going to go ahead and click the enable button. I'm going to select the time. 2 a.m. is fine by me, so I don't have anything else going, it looks like. So that would then be scheduled in your Windows Task Scheduler. And if you go, it won't show on the secondary monitor, but if I search for the Task Scheduler on my Windows Start menu, it should open this, and under Task Scheduler, if you go to the Task Scheduler library here, you can see all of your import and export jobs, and you can see that one that's ready to go at 2 a.m. And you know, there's other things that I can do now that it's here. I can go to the properties, and I can edit things like security permissions, like if I want it to run whether I'm logged in or not. I can also update the time. If I change the time or any settings here, it'll update it in Accudemia as well. And you can even manually run these from here as well. So that's pretty much all of that exporting in a nutshell. Any questions? Oh, and I said I didn't update that part of the slide here, but basically now you know how to export.
Emily says the link in the email opens up the CSV file. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Sorry if you can hear my kid watching YouTube in the other room.
Hi, Nick. This is Julio. I do have a question for you.
Hey, Julio.
Hey, on the data export, when is there a way to enter a range, like a date from this date to this date, instead of just clicking last 7 days, last month, last 3 months? If I want to get really specific to certain dates, is it possible to do that, or not yet?
Not currently. The way that it works is just off those, like, I think we have about 15 exports it is. So if there's like an export missing, what I would do is add that on our user voice feedback website, so that that they'll know like we need to add that or have like a customizable date range. I know right now we have like the non-specific date ranges because if you think about it, when you're scheduling it, you want it to be like the last 30 days or last 60 days or something like that, so that it's basically just saying like, okay, keep pulling, but pull only this time period. And if we had specific dates, I feel like it would, like the only way I would see maybe for that to work if you're scheduling it. Now, if you're doing it one time, that would make sense, maybe have something in the interface, but like maybe if you were doing a cumulative semester one where it just kept pulling those same dates and keep adding to that export. So yeah, I guess there'd be a benefit, but yeah, definitely put that out there. Here, I'm gonna put
yeah, that sounds great. And the reason I asked that is because currently I'm working with institutional research, and I guess they're their numbers were off, and they
Okay.
wanted me to provide a whole year, not this, not this 2020. And so I found another way to do it, just through running a report
Yeah,
on the actual
that
reports.
that's
But
what I was gonna say. You could do that too, if you
yeah, I thought
needed
that was
to.
helpful. But when I went to the exports, I was like, oh, there's no range. But I did find another way. But I thought it would be neat, just to have that option.
Yeah, no, definitely. I could see, like, especially in the interface when we're doing like the one-time run within Accudemia, like it could have under exports here, like choose a date range or something,
Right.
Uh,
Right.
I mean, it's using the same engine, so I mean, like basically you could say, okay, session logs, choose your dates, and then it could have like the date selection or something.
Right. That'd be neat. Yeah.
But yeah, so it's definitely that website there to kind of put the feedback on. And like I said, we always kind of refer whenever there's something that the software could do, but it doesn't, to kind of get it out there, because this is the first place we look when you make
Okay.
those suggestions. So it's a really cool place to get the developers to know exactly what, everybody's wanting in the software.
Thank you. That's helpful.
You're welcome. Was there any other questions in the, oh, you said, Emily said you can download the results from the actual session log screen. Oh, yeah, yeah. Let me show you that, what she's talking about. So going to the actual session logs here, and I don't have that much here, but if I were to say, where's the date range? Oh, custom range, there we go. And let's say I set it to, I wanted from January 1st this year to, I know it hasn't happened yet, but we'll go to like December 31st of this year. So it's going to show me all those logs. And then we have this download as CSV. The only thing you do have to be careful of is look at how many records you're downloading. I think there's a limit on how many, and I believe that limit to be 1,000. The reason why is this was supposed to be like a quick export feature where you can download as a CSV of all the records in this current view. So, but you can do that. And for instance, I only have 11 records, so it shouldn't have a problem with it. But yeah, like if you had made some kind of filtering on that page, like let's say I had said, okay, I want all the records, but I only want it for this service, and you could do that too. Like you could maybe pull, okay, service by service, so that it's maybe within the 1,000, record limit. But that's a quick way to export data as well. Like a little convenience thing that we put in there.
Questions this week?
I
Okay.
have
Oh,
I do
Liam
have a
does.
question. So if I noticed that, I noticed that one of our tutors had two accounts. It had a tutor account and a student account. And I noticed that when I updated it to one session, I did indicate that it was a tutor and that it was a student. But then I noticed that that student was or that tutor didn't have access to Accudemia. So what I did is I actually went back and activated both accounts. Is there a tip or something that you suggest as far as like how to, so we don't have multiple accounts? What would be the best way to just create one account so that the tutor has just one account instead of two accounts?
Yeah, so I mean, I've had that happen with some of my test data because I'm just, importing maybe the same users, but what happens is the way that there might be a duplicate, and you can actually take a look at this, is that the ID number, the primary ID, is determining whether, like when you're importing data, especially, this is really important that every time you list the primary ID that you're using, whatever IDs is already in the system. And I don't know, just looking at this list, I might have cleaned up some of these, but If I do have duplicates, so 9 times out of 10, it's because the ID number was different. So here's a good example. So I have Joshua Almond, and he's actually in here twice. You can tell it's the same person because they got the same email, but they were imported as an instructor and a student. But under their instructor ID, they had a different D number here, it looks like. And then under their student ID, it was a little different as well. So basically, whenever the IDs do not match 100%, that's going to happen. You're going to have two separate accounts. But now on the other situation, you could have people that have dual roles. So like looking at Janice here, as an example, she's a tutor and a system admin. Now that's kind of a bad example because I probably had to, all system admins have to be designated in the system, but here's a better one. So Lauren, for instance, she has student and tutor roles, and that was probably assigned through the import process. So as long as like their IDs match every time, then it's going to combine those users, so they won't have separate accounts.
Yeah,
But
thank you.
that's
Yeah,
the main thing.
I know that. Yeah, I definitely know what you're referring to. Yeah, because they did have the primary ID was or the username was different. So yeah, I definitely know exactly what you're referring to.
And what I've seen actually too is like, so let's say they have like you just mentioned, like a username. So maybe on one account they have this number swapped with this number. So they
Yeah,
did it as like a secondary, right?
right.
And so if that happens, then it's just a matter of fixing that import that was doing it backwards.
Okay.
Or if somebody manually created the person, they might have just accidentally, flip-flopped the IDs or whatever.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it was created manually.
oh, okay. So
Yeah.
yeah, it could be something like that. Maybe you thought like the main ID was the username or vice versa, and it got put in both ways.
Yes, that's exactly what happened. It got reversed.
And all I would do is probably take the one that matches everybody else's ID format, like, if they're using this one, and inactivate the other one. What you can also do is you can still get reports on inactive folks. So instead of deleting them, just inactivate the one that they're not going to use, and then make that one that you left active, have that dual role.
Okay.
Right.
Yeah, thank you.